Hello and welcome. Today we are revisiting some of my favorite spring products, and this was actually, the items were voted on by you on the community tab. So if you weren't somebody who was able to place a vote, definitely subscribe to my channel, follow me on the post section to keep up with things like that. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Dior Sweet Bouquet, the YSL blushes, YSL powder, Chanel Cocoa Shine Bombs. We also have some new brushes from Cle de Peau, such as the 3 new Nebula series brushes, the Baby Owl, and this Kyoto Kakishibu brush, the flame brush. And they are fantastic. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have nothing on my skin at all except skincare right now. And I wanted to clip back my hair first, but I wanted to share these because these were gifted by the brand Ella Rose. And I've been really enjoying these because they have this two-pronged approach. And if your hair is still like a little damp or prone to creasing, these are crease proof. So I've actually been using these over my, the usual ones that I've used for years, which do cause a little bit of creasing. I usually just ignore it, but these are a bit better. So just wanted to share that for anybody who's looking for something like that. So as always, I put a microfiber cloth on my lap and I'm going to bring you in. We're going to start off with primer and foundation. So my skincare has been on for a little while, so I am going to use the OG primer, which I really like this as a skincare refresher in particular. So anytime I feel like my skin's like a little dry or, I just need a little boost with my skincare, I've been reaching for this primer. So it does have a 6-month shelf life. So it's a short shelf life, but I really enjoy it and it's organic. So for concealer, I figured we'd go in with Victoria Beckham, and this one is in FL2. So we've got this applicator here, click bottom, and I really like this concealer. It's my go-to is still the Valentino. Usually that's kind of like my everyday concealer, which is very lightening and brightening. It's going to be light coverage in general. But I really enjoyed this one, and I have shades FL1 and FL2. FL1 and FL2 mixed together gives me a better option, but when I'm just using one, I reach for FL2. Cle de Peau gifted me some brushes. This is actually an eye brush, and this is in the Nebula series, which I absolutely love. We're going to talk about these, but this is the SO4, so we're going to use this for eyeshadow, but this is actually a T-Squirrel mix, and this particular combination and the design of the hairs does allow it to be used with liquids and creams as well as powders. So I'm going to use this for the concealer. I'm going to wipe it off very well on my microfiber cloth. I'm going to use it again on the eyes. For foundation, we're going in with the Prada, and I use LC5. That is my shade, and this is, one of my favorite foundations. I really enjoy this one a lot. I'm going to use the Kyoto F04, which is one of my go-to foundation brushes. This is synthetic. It's a flat top kabuki style brush, and personally, I really like it because I don't like using sponges for the cleanliness aspect. And this does give closer to a sponge-like finish when you pat this on the skin. So you can still get that really nice smooth finish. And if you have one of those foundation that's a little finicky with a brush, this brush I think works really well with it. So this side has the foundation, this side doesn't. Now typically I'll go in with my Sisley Blur Expert powder, but I thought today we're going to skip that and really just see the effect of this foundation on its own. But I do typically, I'll put on like a liquid primer and then the Sisley Blur Expert in shade 0 and then my foundation. So I have some marks on my nose because my allergies have already started for the year. So I was trying Breathe Right strips instead of, taking my allergy medications. And they've been pulling off a little bit of skin. So that's what this irritation is here. Still getting used to those. Not sure how much I like those yet. So this is the foundation. And I think it gives a nice light finish. It's kind of more of a satin matte texture on the skin. You can see we do have a little bit of glow, but it's not overly dewy, so I give it more of a satin finish. And I think it looks really nice, light, and natural. So this is one of my favorites. And then we're going to set the foundation using the YSL loose powder. So I purchased 2 shades of this powder. I have shades 4 and 5. 4 is your lavender powder, which is really a pink. And sometimes I'll use that to set under the eye. But honestly, when I don't feel like using 2 different powders, I've just been reaching for the blue one. I really like the blue, and this is the one I've been using the most. All right, so we're gonna go in with this brush from Koh Gen Do, and this one was gifted to me from Baume, but I did also purchase one of these myself as well. And this is one of the Shibu dye brushes, and I love these flame shapes, and it goes very nicely to set underneath the eyes. You can use it for highlight, you can use it for blush. You know, if you are only powdering in certain spaces, you know, it works really well for that. So I'm just gonna add a little extra powder here. We'll make this part a little bit drier, and you can see I just kind of like twirling the brush a little bit when I feel like I need a little bit more powder in a particular spot. I'm just kind of leaving this swatch area of my cheeks. And we're going to use some blush there. So you can see that the powder doesn't leave a powdery finish at all. Even when I went in with like 2 layers in certain areas, it really doesn't. But it does kind of cool off my skin a little bit. You know, you don't really see blue on the skin per se, but you definitely, you know, it neutralizes a little bit of the redness, which, you know, is more common for like a green powder, but it helps me with this blue one as well. So I think it adds a little bit of brightening, it tones down my redness a little bit. So that's why I reach for the blue one more than the lavender, which is really a pink. So before we finish off the cheeks, we're gonna go in with the Dior Sweet Bouquet. Now I have already done a video on this. I'll leave that linked down below. This is one of my favorite palettes of spring. I've reached for it a ton, but the one that they sent me was broken. It took me a long time to get my replacement, and I did have to follow up a couple times on that, but I did get it. So this is my newly replaced one, and everything is intact. I actually had 2 broken shades before, so it was, you know, after using it a couple times, it was such a mess. I just had to toss that palette. So I'm very glad to have this replacement. It is limited edition, and it's exclusive to the Dior website, but it is available. So it's not one, it's one that they've already restocked after selling out. So I'm going to start off with the Trish McEvoy. This is the eye primer in Demure. So I'm just going to put a little bit here on my lids. And you know what? I'm going to go in with the S04 brush again. With this particular primer, usually with eye primers, I'll use my finger, but I really like using a brush with the Trish McEvoy. And yeah, I'm loving this primer. So this brush here, as I mentioned, it's T-Squirrel and Weasel Hair mix. And because of this particular mix, it's more resistant to waters and oils, yet it's still really good for sensitive eyes. And so because of the way it's designed, you can use it for liquids, powders, and creams. Now, it's not one that you want to purchase necessarily with the intent of always using with liquids, but it's definitely one that can be used that way. So you can see the shape here. We've got a little bit of there we go. It's got a bit of a taper on both sides, making it really comfortable to smooth things over. You don't want to use like a stabbing motion or anything like that with it, but definitely if you smooth like this, it's very silky on the skin. If you stab, you know, some of the hairs might feel a little bit, they're a little thicker in diameter, so they'll feel a little pokey if you go like this. But if you are smoothing across the skin, this is really good for those with sensitive skin on their eyes. And, you know, everybody's skin sensitive there, but some people I know have issues where certain brushes they can't even use because they're just not soft enough. This is a good option. So I'm going to use the 3 new Nebula brushes while we're looking at the palette. So we'll talk about these afterwards, but I do just want to show you all of them right now. So this one here is our crease brush, and you can see that it has a nice amount of kick to it. It's going to stay pretty firm in, you know, in its position. And you can see how much kickback it has. This one here is the S01. And so this one was gifted to me, but I do also have one of those that I purchased. I love these brushes. This one here is a great pencil brush. This is the S05. And you can see this is going to be like a nice chubby pencil, but again, it's going to keep its shape really well. It's not going to be too floppy. So you can really get precision with this whole series. And then this is the S04 that we've been looking at, or S04. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to go in with the light pink here. And this is the S01. I'm going to use this for our crease. And I'm just tapping off the excess on my microfiber cloth. And I'm just kind of lightly kind of setting the primer a little bit with it as well before buffing into the crease. I'm going to take this up to the brow bone because it has like a nice highlighting feature to it. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this shade here, and we're going to go a little bit more softly with this in the crease, and I'm going to show you how precisely you can stay in one area with this brush. You can see it doesn't flail about and can really get precision with where you are placing your product. So you can see between this eye and this eye that just served to deepen the crease a little bit. And I have to say this shade that we're using is, it might be my favorite in the palette. Next, I'm taking the S04 and we're going to go into the middle lavender shade here. And one other thing that's I think really great about these brushes is because they have kind of this stiffer feeling to them, yet still very silky smooth. They pick up your products really well. This is a very light, soft palette, but you pick up plenty of product and pigment with these brushes. Because they are not, you know, soft and fluffy in that sense. They're not an airy brush. So you're really picking up and depositing pigment very easily. Next, we're going to go back into this shade here, which is kind of like a lilac taupe. And I love this shade. So I'm going to put this one here on the outer half. And you can see how nicely everything blends. And we have this beautiful sheen with these shades. The only one that's really a matte, the lilac in the middle is sort of a matte, and so is the light pink. But it's really the light pink. With the lilac, I still see a little bit of a sheen with it, even though there's no like glitter or shimmer. The other shades in this palette are all going to have a bit of shimmer. You can see this is going to be satin, and these two are going to be shimmer here. So let's take a little bit of this first shade. We're back to the S01, and I'm just going to put a little bit of this on the brow bone here and just kind of blend that with this pink, which you could see, again, when we put that on originally, even though it's technically a matte shade, there's still a little bit of a sheen to it. I'm going to use the S05 for the inner corner here with the white shade here. And this is a really pretty topper as well. When I use this as a topper, I like to use my finger to apply this one. But you can see it adds a nice white brightening effect here for the eyes. And then down below, we're going to go again into the lilac taupey shade for under the lower lashes. I'm going to take the Valentino purple eyeliner. I'm going to put this on directly with the pencil, but then I'm going to take the S05 brush and just kind of smudge this in just for like a light effect. I'm going very lightly actually on the lids. I don't want a ton of eyeliner. I'm kind of going for a lightening, brightening effect today with the eyes. So just keeping everything very light. But you can see how nicely this works to kind of smudge things out. Now, the Valentino pencil has a brush on the other side, which, you know, I'll use occasionally, but I actually prefer something more smudger style versus the brush. So it's not something I reach for often, and I'll usually go with a brush instead. All right, so that's that for the eyeshadow, and now I'm just going to do mascara and brows. For mascara, I'm going to take the Rabanne Rockstar Mascara, which I really love this one. I think this is one of the best new mascaras that I've tried. I did purchase the new Armani. I have not tried that one yet, but we've had some really great ones that have come out recently, like the new Prada and the new brown shade of the Lisa Eldridge. I love the Lisa Eldridge formula. But you can see this gives you a nice, fluffy, more volumized look without necessarily being like clumpy. You can get that clumpy look if you want it by adding more layers, but I think it gives a really nice amount of volume here without it. For brows, again, whenever I feel like being quick and easy, I go with the SUQQU Coloring Brow Gel, and I use the shade Sand, and I really need to get my brows done, but my brow artist, she is on vacation for a few weeks, so we'll have to wait. All right, so these are the eyes from a distance. And again, I love this palette for a nice light brightening effect. We've got, some soft pinks and lavenders, a little bit of a taupey lilac and so forth. And I just think the colors are great. So we'll swatch everything at the end. Now for blush, we're going in with the YSL, and I really like to mix them, particularly two different finishes. So we're going to take 6, which is matte. This is Rose Haze, and 44, the Nude Lavalier, which has the satin finish or the shimmer finish. So I'm going to go ahead and mix those, and we're going to look at 2 different brushes. I mean, I had to buy one of these myself as well, but Bobo was kind enough to send me this. This is the Baby Owl, and it is stunning. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I love any sort of angled cheek brush shape like this. And this is going to have like a really nice density here. This is one that you can definitely use with bronzer. I think this is a great smaller bronzer brush. Blush you can use it with. You can use the other end for highlight. You can use it for contour. You can use this for face powders. You can also even use this for foundation. Now, I wouldn't purchase it as a foundation brush, but this is a mix of fox and Psycho goat hair. So with that mix, it's not going to hurt it if you use a liquid or a cream product with this once in a while. It's also really great with powder foundation. So again, I wouldn't recommend purchasing this for use with cream products, but you could definitely do it once in a while. So we'll use the Baby Owl on one side, and we'll use the Flame Brush on the other. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get a little bit of each color on here. And then I'm going to actually, this is what it looks like on here. I'm going to dab some of this off on my microfiber cloth. So we have a softer application here. And you can see I can just pat this on. And you know what? I'll go over this. I'm going to just build this up so you guys can see the color better right now. And then I'll just soften this out before we finish this look. But you can see this is a brush that can definitely apply things in a very pigmented fashion. It's incredibly soft on the skin, and her owl brushes, they sell it so quickly every time. So if you have any interest in this brush, I would definitely not wait. Plus, if you've purchased one of the other owl brushes in the past, you get a discount on this one. Now, in contrast, our flame brush is going to, I'm just kind of twirling the brush a bit. The flame brush is going to give you a bit of a softer application, but you'll be able to see we're still going to get plenty of pigmentation. And again, I'm just kind of dabbing any of the excess off. And I always like to kind of tap this against my hand to make sure I really don't have too much. So again, you can dab this on and you're going to get more pigment. You can do a soft brush here. And you can build this up. So you're still going to be able to build this up to a higher intensity. Just go ahead and show you guys this built up. But you're not going to get as high of an intensity as you would with the Baby Owl brush, which is significantly more dense. So here's this versus Baby Owl. So here is the difference between the two. So I'm just going to soften up the blushes a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and take my foundation brush, kind of soften these up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and let me just wipe off a little extra. So I'm just squeezing a tiny bit of foundation on my hand. Just going to kind of go over this area a little bit. Just to kind of soften that up, just so I get a softer finish. And I'll go over this again with the blush just to, make sure everything's even on both sides. So just gonna reset with powder around the edges there. So you could really see how much pigmentation you can get with the owl brush, the baby owl brush. But I wanted to show you how softly I can put it on with this brush as well. You can get a really nice soft blended out look with this brush. And again, it's so soft on the skin. I love it. So you can see that both brushes are going to do a great application. It's just going to be a personal preference. All right, for highlighter, we're going to go in with the Lilacmania from Dior. And I'm going to show you how you can also use this to kind of cool off a cheek color as well as using it as a highlighter. So I cleaned off the baby owl brush. We're going to go in to the highlighter with this, and I'm going to show you how you can how this will actually just kind of cool off the color a little bit, make it a little bit more of a blue-based pink. We can still get that shine and sheen from the highlight as well, and it looks more like a shimmery blush. So this is with the Lilacmania. So you can see the difference between my right side and my left. So I love how if my blush ends up just a little warmer than I'd like, I can mix this highlighter in and just cool it off a little bit. But let me show you how the highlighter looks just as a highlighter. Now again, I could use this flat end of the baby owl, but I love flame shaped brushes for highlighters. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of swirl this, tap off the excess, just get a nice soft finish there. And look at that. So beautiful. I love it. So two very different looks and applications, but I love this highlighter for many reasons. Plus this is one that, you know, I don't know if it's technically eye safe, so I don't want to recommend it this way, but I do use it on my eyes with no issues. So just to make it even, I'm just going to kind of pat this a little bit with whatever's left on the brush, just to make it a little bit more equal between the sides. And yeah, that's the blush. All right, for lips, we're going to go in with some of the new Chanel Rouge Coco Shine Bombs. And I feel like these have gotten a little overlooked with all the bombs that have come out, namely the Hermes lipsticks, which are really more of a balm. And, you know, so let's go ahead. We're going to revisit these. My favorite shade is actually 762 Raspberry Kiss, but we're going to mix a little bit of the Charming Lilac into this as well. You can see that the Raspberry Kiss is a beautiful raspberry shade, and, you know, it leans cool, but it's not an overly cool color at all. It's definitely much more neutral for a raspberry shade, whereas a Charming Lilac is definitely going to be more of a bluer based purple. Mixing the two of these together gives you a little bit more of a cooler tone raspberry with just a hint of purple, and I love the effect. All right, so this is a final look, and you can see after taking out the clips, I don't have any creases in my hair. Everything has stayed totally fine. And yeah, let me know what you think of this. And let's go ahead and we're going to move on to talking about all the products and the brushes that we used here today. All right, so we started off with the OG primer, and as I mentioned, I really love using this to refresh my skincare. So if I usually do my skincare early in the morning, and then I have to do the school run and everything. So it's usually been a few hours before I put on my makeup. So I've been enjoying using this to kind of refresh that. And, you know, sometimes if I have to add additional sunscreen and so forth, then I'll go in with a different primer. I love something, you know, the Surratt Perfectioniste primer is still my favorite, but I don't know what's happened to that. It's like so hard to find. But the SUQQU primer is one that I use a lot. I've been using the Prada primer as well, the What's Up Beauty. So those are some of the ones that I reach for often. For concealer, we went in with the Victoria Beckham in FL2, and let me just go ahead and swatch that here. You can see this is going to be kind of a warm tannish peachy shade here, and it's not typically my go-to, but I love mixing it with the FL1. When I'm lazy though, I just use one or the other, usually just the FL2, but you can see FL1 is significantly lighter and more ivory than FL2. FL2 I tend to reach for when I need a bit more color correcting, because if my circles are a little bit deeper, I didn't get a good night's sleep, then the peachiness of this really does help camouflage those. For foundation, we went in with the Prada and LC5, and I actually, how many different shades of this did I try? I forget how many shades it took me to find my color match, But LC5, it's not really a cool foundation. It's really more of a true neutral. So if you're fair neutral, this is a good match. And just for comparison, this one here, we'll put the Dior Hydra Nude in 0N right next to it. You can see the Hydra Nude is going to be slightly more yellow. And then this is the Cle de Peau Radiant Natural in I-10, which the Cle de Peau foundations, those have my go-to colors. You can see that I-10 is pretty close to the Prada LC5. LC5 is slightly peachier. So just a general idea of how that stacks up with some other colors. But I loved the Prada foundation formula so much when I tried it that I had to find one that worked for me. We're going to finish up with all of the actual makeup products, and then we'll talk about the brushes at the end. So after that, we did go in with the YSL setting powder. This is the All Hours Hyper Blur in number 5, which is their blue powder. And I never use the puffs that come with it. I love to use the brushes. You can see that the sifter here has fairly large holes, so it does kind of dispense, pretty quickly. But I love the actual powder. Just like the previous Givenchy powders or the Givenchy loose ones now, I don't love the square packaging just because I do end up making a mess kind of on the corners here, especially if I'm trying to decant something back into the round lid. So, I don't love the square shaped packaging, but I think this is a really beautiful powder on the skin, and it gives such a light, loose look, without any sort of powdery texture. It holds up throughout the day. And I think it's just a really beautiful matte powder. As I mentioned, the blue for me works for brightening as well as a little bit of color correction with the redness in my skin. So it's my go-to shade. For eyes, I started off with the eye primer. This is the Eye Base Essentials in the shade Demure from Trish McAvoy. And it's the one I've been using recently. I really, really enjoy it. And then we moved into the Dior palette 936 Sweet Bouquet. And this is labeled limited edition, but after speaking to customer service, it should be around for a while. They have restocked it. It's exclusive to the website though, so don't expect to see it at other places. So our first shade here is going to be kind of a soft pinky champagne, and this is a shimmer. I really think this is a beautiful shade. Next to it, we have a nice bright whiter shimmer here. And, these two shades also work well as highlighters on the face. So, you can even use this pink here as a blush on the face, these as highlighters. So I think this palette is fairly versatile. It is going to be a light color story overall. Our middle shade is a satin matte lilac shade. You can see, even though it looks matte in the pan, we do have a satin sheen to it. And this is a really beautiful lilac. I wouldn't say it's a lavender because a true lavender has a bit more blue in it. And you can see we do have a little bit of pink in there. Our next shade, this is my favorite. This is more of a lilac taupe. And this is going to be a true satin. You can see we've got like a rosy finish to that. It's such a beautiful shade. And this is a palette I reach for very often, and I just use this one as a one and done often. So, I just think it's such a beautiful palette. The pink, you can see, is also going to be a satin matte, and this is going to be a nice pale, soft pink. Think of like a very, those light pink tulips that are coming up right now, or well, not quite yet here, but soon. That's kind of the color you get for this pink. So this is Sweet Bouquet, and I do have a bunch of comparisons in the original video and on the posts or community tab, so you can check those out there. For eyeliner, we went in with a Valentino Color Graph, and this is the Purple Dose. That's what it's called, and this is going to be a shimmery purple eyeliner, and you can see it's a pretty neutral purple, but it does have a little bit of pink in there. And I think it's just really beautiful. It has a nice balance of blue in there, so sometimes you get those purple eyeliners that have a little bit more pink, and then your eyes can look a little bit more red-rimmed or whatever, a little ill. This does not do that, and I use this shade all the time. Then we went in with the Rabanne Rockstar Mascara, which I love this fluffy volumizing brush. I think it does a great job volumizing the lashes. The closest comparison I can make for this would be the Jones Road mascara, which is awesome. I love that Jones Road mascara, but I think I like this one a little bit better. We'll see how it lasts overall, but I feel like the formula on here, I feel a little bit more vinyl in here. So I just feel like it's going to hold up longer over time, you know, before the actual mascara itself dries out. And for brows, I went in with the SUQQU. This is the Coloring Eyebrow Gel in 02, which I love this. This is just nice and easy. We have a nice thin wand here that's easy to use. And this is the sand shade there. So it's a really nice go-to. And yeah, so that was that. And then we moved on to cheeks. Now for cheeks, we did a mix of 2 of the YSL blushes. So we have 44 Nude Lavalier, which is a satin or shimmer finish. And that's this one here. And you can see this is kind of like a neutral rose. And if we were to buff that one out, this is what you get. You can see you are going to get a sheen if you're using this one on its own. And even mixing them, you do get a bit of a sheen. And then we have 6 Rose Haze, which they don't sell in the US. I had to purchase this one from Harrods. It is a little bit peachier, a little warmer than I was hoping for, but I think it is a really nice nude shade here. And you can see those there. Now the YSL blush formula, I personally really like it. I think they're really easy to use. I love mixing the mattes and the shimmers together, and you know, they have enough of a powdery texture that's really easy to blend out, buff out if you have too much and so forth. Yet it's not so powdery that it's messy or something that's easily brushed away. It's a velvety texture, a velvety powder. And I think that's really kind of the best description of how it feels. And I think they're really awesome. So yeah, I really love the blush formula. I wish they had brought out all of the shades, you know, here in the US, but in other places as well. Now, the Lilacmania highlighter, I think, is kind of like a hidden gem. Dior has come out with lilac highlighters quite a bit over the last few years, and usually they become like a hard pan mess. This one here, it is firmer in the pan, you know, to start off with, but it's not hard pan. It's just a firmer pressed powder, and I've used this one a ton, and I haven't had any issues with hard pan or anything yet. You can see even with my finger swatches and getting the oils from my fingers, I don't have any issues with that. We have a really beautiful, soft, shimmery finish to it, but it's more of a satin shimmer. You can see there aren't really any large chunks of glitter or anything like that. There is some very finely milled shimmer in there, but I wouldn't say it looks glittery at all. You can build it up, but what's great about this is the fact that it's so subtle that you can actually blend this into blush. You can make a shimmery blush with it. You can cool things off. So it works kind of as a color corrector as well as a highlighter. And I just think it is a wonderful highlighter. And I wish they had put this one in their permanent line instead of in the limited edition line, but it is limited edition. So if you're interested, you know, I wouldn't wait too long. Then on the lips, we did a mix of 762 Raspberry Kiss from Chanel. These are the Rouge Coco Balm Shines. And I personally like these so much better than the original Rouge Coco Balms that they redid a couple years ago. And this one here is 764 Charming Lilac, which you can see is going to be a pinky purple. So mixing the two of these together, I think, you know, it just gives a really beautiful, cooler raspberry look. But if I had to pick one, the Raspberry Kiss is my favorite. It's kind of like my go-to out of all of these. And I think is a gorgeous shade, but I really love mixing these together. Texturally, these are smooth. They feel like a thin lip balm with a bit of oil texture to it. So it's going to be thin. It has a little bit of a glossy texture to it, but it's not sticky at all. And it's very different. I've had some questions as to how these compare to the Hermes. Their Hermes is more of like a gloss stick. So it's going to be like thicker, glossier. You know, the texture is completely different. Whereas this is going to be thinner. And it definitely has a little bit more of a glide to it versus a cushion. All right, so I hope all of these swatches were helpful. Let's go ahead and take a look at the brushes. So thank you so much to Fude Bobo for gifting the brushes to me today. I absolutely love them. And as I mentioned, I did have to order some as well because they're just that good. So some of the ones I ordered, they are for like gifts or for myself, but they're just like that good. So let's start off with the baby owl here. So this is called the baby owl trapezoid brush. And that is because of our brush head shape. You can see it is going to have a nice angle here. It's incredibly soft, yet still dense. So this is going to have your same hair type as this owl brush that came out last year. So this is essentially the parent owl. So you can see that this one here is going to be more of like a round buffer brush. Again, they're going to have the same hair type. So we have a mix of fox and undyed SUQQU goat hair. So this brush from last year also had another owl brush in the family. This does have a different hair type. This is a big fluffy powder brush. This brush is actually available still, but it has a different handle now. It comes in a wooden handle. However, if you've purchased any of those previous owl brushes, you are going to get a discount on the new baby owl. So I thought that was really generous of her. And I just think the baby owl, you know, being released at this time of year, it's perfect. And I love, you know, just the concept. It's a baby brush. So I think it's so cute. And this is so functional. So as I mentioned, this is one that you can use for blush, bronzer, contour. You can use it for powder foundation. You can even use it for highlighter if you use the backside. You know, you can use this for setting powder, either finishing powder. There are so many uses. It's such a versatile brush. And yeah, I just think it is so incredibly silky soft, and the density is great. Now I mentioned one of the things I use almost every day is the Sisley Blur Expert powder, and I typically use a dense buffing brush to apply that. Something like this owl brush, or I use the Chanel oversized kabuki a lot, or, you know, generally like a kabuki brush. This is one that I could use with that powder. It's dense enough. So I can use that with the Sisley Blur Expert, but then it's also multi-purpose for a variety of other features. So if you're somebody who is on a budget or you're looking for a multi-purpose brush, this really fits a wide variety of categories, and I think it is an excellent choice. One of my favorite brushes from Fude Bobo is actually the CH1. This is actually the precursor to it. It came with this beautiful rabbit handle, but my other CH1s are dirty at the moment, or being washed. They're drying. But I wanted to show you the difference because I do love this. If you're looking for something with an angled shape that's a little airier and fluffy, I use this primarily for blush and highlight. I don't really use it as much for anything else, but you can use it also for powder. It's not quite firm enough, in my opinion, for like a true bronzer contour, unless you're going in with a very light layer. But if you're looking for like a fluffier version, you can see the CH1 is a great option, and it's one of my very favorite brushes. So I actually have 3 of them that I've purchased. I think one was gifted and I purchased 2 of them. I love them and I gave them out for Christmas this year. And as I mentioned before, in a pinch, you could use this with like a liquid or cream product because you do have a mix of SUQQU undyed goat hair in here, which is usable for that particular purpose. However, I personally am only going to use this with powders, and that would be my recommendation. Although it's not going to hurt it to use it with a liquid or cream once in a while, particularly if you wash it off right away. I do recommend always washing brushes used with creams and liquids, you know, as soon as possible, because the issue with creams and liquids, particularly on more delicate hairs like the silver fox hairs in here, is that as those creams and liquids dry on the bristle, they are so delicate that the dried product actually weighs it down and can cause the hair to break. That's the issue. And so, you know, if you were to use it with liquids and creams, not an issue, but I would definitely recommend washing it right away and letting it dry properly. All right, let's move on to the Kyoto Flame brush. And I think this is a great brush. This is used with a Kakashibu dyeing technique, which is your persimmon dyed. So we have high-grade SUQQU goat hair that has been hand dyed with this particular special process that gives it this flame appearance. But we are still able to use this brush with liquids, creams, and powders. So I'm still going to primarily use this just with my powder products, but the dyeing technique actually makes it a little bit more water and oil resistant. So it is something that you can use with creams and liquids without harming the brush or having to immediately rush to wash it off like I'd recommend with the baby owl brush. But regardless, I always recommend washing off creams and liquids as soon as you can. So this is a fantastic brush. And what I really like about it is, as I mentioned, the flame shape makes it really versatile, easy to apply. You have this light fluffy tip here that you can see you could get like a really soft application of highlighter, but the core here is actually pretty dense. So it's not fluffing out all over the place. So you can still be very precise. We have this nice angle here where you can kind of use more of a pressing application. You could use a swirly motion with this. It's just very versatile and it's incredibly soft and very high quality. Now this one here, this is my TF3 from Sonia G. It dried a little funky, so please ignore this, but you can see it does have a similar shape. But the Sonia G TF3 is going to have a slightly wider diameter. And even though mine did dry a little funky, the tip is it's not quite as small of a tip as the Koh Gen Do. So just something to note there with difference. The Sonia G is going to be more of an airier, fluffier brush in comparison to the Koh Gen Do, which is going to just be a little bit more structured. And by the way, both of these have been washed and dried. Next, we're going to take a look at the new Nebula brushes from Baume. And this is a collaboration between Baume from Fude Bobo and SUQQU. And we have a great hair blend here of Weasel and T-Squirrel, which this is not common. A T-Squirrel is not something that you see very often in brushes. You'll see them sometimes in something like the SUQQU Kiwami set, which comes out like once a year and is a very high price tag item, very luxurious. They usually only have like something like 10 or 20 sets, it's very limited, and you might see T-Squirrel mix into those sets. But T-Squirrel on its own, it's not something you come across very often. It's a really nice soft hair type. And mixing it with the Weasel really gives it a bit more structure. So starting here with the S01, you can see that we have a crease brush here that is incredibly soft on the skin, but it maintains its structure. We have a strong and dense core. So you're able to be really precise with this. So it's not going to be a fluffy crease brush, but it's going to have a lot of structure and precision. And I think anybody with like hooded eyes or slightly hooded eyes, this is going to be really an awesome crease brush to kind of get into those grooves. So yeah, I absolutely love this. And I love how soft this is. The T-Squirrel Weasel hair mix is a blend that I can use on my eyes after I've done a ton of eye swatches. So that's, that's one of the reasons I really love this series. It's so comforting and soft and silky on my eyes, and I don't feel any irritation. So the S04 is more of a shader style brush, and as you could see, it works very well on the eyes, but you could also use it for other applications. I wouldn't recommend necessarily using these with creams all the time, but you could use these with creams and liquids because this particular mix of, we've got the very soft T-Squirrel hairs, and then we have the stronger, more elastic Weasel hairs, which are more water resistant and oil based. The whole mix together though becomes a bit more water resistant and resistant to oils in your skins, making it, something safe to use with liquids, creams, and powders. And this brush in particular, I think is it's a medium large size shader, and it does taper on both sides here, giving it a nice smooth texture when you run it over your skin. And as you could see, it really brings out the pigmentation of any light shadows, or if you've got like shimmer shadows and so forth. Because this isn't a fluffy brush, this works really well with shimmers to reduce any fallout as well. And last up, we have the S05, which is a pencil brush. And again, just like the crease brush and the S04, we do have that stiff core there because of the elasticity of those Weasel hairs, which really allows you to be a bit more precise, yet it's so incredibly soft. So again, if you have very sensitive eyes and you have a hard time like blending, liners and so forth, or, lining with a powder near the waterline, because I know, at least for me, after doing eye swatches, sometimes those pencil brushes, just having the little fibers kind of separate there can give me some irritation. I can feel each one of those. This one is so soft. I don't feel any of the individual fibers, and it just feels silky on my skin. So I really love this Tea Squirrel Weasel Hair mix. I think it makes these brushes really special. And if you're not familiar with the Nebula series from Fude Bobo, you know, you're missing out. So if you're looking for a really great, well thought out brush series, particularly, you know, for her eyes, definitely check out the Nebula series, and they're fairly priced. I have had quite a few questions about how to see the prices in other types of currency because the website is in yen. The way I do it is either I'll add things to my cart and then I'll go to checkout and hit PayPal. And before actually submitting anything, it will give me my total. I can do that for each individual item if I want. But honestly, what I usually do is I'll just open a separate browser and I'll just put convert, copy the price from yen from the website. And I'll say convert this yen to USD and it'll give me the price. So, you know, that's how I do it. Definitely log in, set up an account with Fude Bobo, and you know, she actually has sales all the time right now. There is 10% off on her website. And I would have to say her website, I think, is the most fairly priced for Fude brushes. And everything on there is going to be very well curated. She doesn't stock everything, but everything she stocks is really incredible. And she stocks them for a reason, you know, and that reason being that she loves them. She's a true enthusiast. So again, thank you to Bobo for sending me these brushes. And overall, I hope everything here has been helpful. I had a lot of fun revisiting all the makeup here today. The runner-up for the poll, we had a poll on the community tab about what to show in this video today. And the runner-up was rolling the dice. So I think we'll have to do that another time. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you very soon. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the products in the comments. And thank you so much for watching.